Hello, everyone, and welcome to Southern Fried Interviews with your boy ATL Piglet. Um, at work today and have a little bit of free time, guys. So I thought that I would do a little recap of Worlds, and I made some notes here, and just gonna sit and relax and talk about Worlds from this past weekend. Exactly 1 week from today, we crowned new teams champions and a new world champion. And by new world champion, I mean Garrett got the run back. So shout out to him for being the first ever back-to-back world champion and the first player ever to win in Gen Con, Vegas, and UK all consecutively. That's a really big accomplishment for Garrett. I of all people love to shit talk Garrett and everything like that, but when it comes down to it, he's a great player and arguably one of the best of all time. So I think very highly of Andrew Alexa, but Garrett's results speak for himself, so I'm gonna have to hold that. The team's world champions was Rochester CCG presents Canadian Heel Turn, which was myself, which I'm really happy to win another card. Kevin Broberg and our Canadian heel, Devin Bernier. So he backstabbed his boys from Calgary, and he is now a Rochester CCG sponsored player. So orange shirt and all. So that was really awesome. It meant a lot to win with those guys, and I'll talk a little bit more in the interview about that and everything like that. Just fair warning for everyone, I haven't done an interview in a while. I had a lot of fun. This is probably one of my favorite trips I've taken in all of UFS travel, in all of travel in general that I've done, even not for UFS. It's one of my favorite trips. So I might ramble on for a little bit. I know hearing me talk by myself for an hour might be kind of boring, but I hope you guys enjoy it, and I hope to keep it exciting. So I'm going to get right into talking about the event. Worlds 2016, to me, this was the event of new blood, and new blood came to play, and they came out strong. I met so many new players. We had such growth of UFS. I said on Top Deck Heroes the night before I left that I doubt we could get 100 players without release of a Street Fighter set, and I honestly believe that. But I mean, proved wrong right there. I ate those words. We had 99 players per team, so we already, had over 100 on Teams Day, because I knew a couple of guys just didn't have teams or wanted to enjoy Vegas. So we were already at over 100 in the Teams Championship. And then I think in singles we had about 115. So UFS is growing, and that is really awesome. We got cut to top 16. We had a fair amount of diversity, more diversity than usual, which is kind of exciting. We've had the diversity debate for a long time here, and the fact of the matter is, my big argument for the diversity debate is diversity has pretty much been in UFS forever. The game was designed with diversity in mind, so it isn't like Jason just came up with this rule. This has been in the game since the Sabretooth days. So, you get what you get when you play UFS, and when you play UFS, you get diversity. So, I'm just gonna go into a little bit of talking about the tournament. I'm going to give some shout outs. I'm going to talk a little bit about my decks. And I think just going to talk a little bit and see what everyone has to say and react about it once I put the video up. So, of course, everyone knows I'm a big Clark player. I like to think that I am the best in the world with Clark. So I think that I sort of proved that for this event, which was big. In teams, the first day, I played what I thought was my better Clark deck, my Fire Clark. And a big reason I chose fire as well. I almost played good in teams, but I wanted to go with the fire deck because it had a better Kim matchup. And even starting like round one of the tournament, we played against Corey, Chris, and Dan Hughes, and us winning the die roll and getting me pair into their Kim matchup was really big. People use their Kim deck sort of as, hey, Kim is free wins, and when people's Kim deck didn't get the free wins, it was getting beaten. That gave people some trouble, and a lot of people noticed that later into the tournament. I know, like Brett Hillman, and Brett Hillman was playing Kim, and I mean, he was trying. We got paired against twice in one of the last rounds of Swiss, and in the finals. And man, he was trying to dodge. He was trying to dodge the Clark deck. I mean, he did. They successfully dodged, which was good. But he could not pair into me. So that was good. That was him, Bryce, and Brandon Jones. So very good team. Obviously, second place in the event. But I'll talk a little bit about the decks and talk about some of my favorite cards. I'm not going to go over everything. Both the decks are online in the top 16 and the top 4 teams format. I'm just going to talk about some of my favorite cards from the decks, what makes the decks powerful, and what I think will make, maybe some improvements or cuts that I would make. But I'll start with the good deck that I played in singles. It got, I believe it was 11th place in singles, 10th or 11th place. But my good deck is not as powerful as my fire deck. It just isn't. It doesn't have the control pieces. And the biggest thing it doesn't have is just answers to selective committal and answers to onboard throw hate, basically. So I wanted to play the good deck in singles just to kind of see how good it was. It was good enough to make it into the top 16, but I did have a lot of draws, and I had a devastating loss to an air quick man played by Tanner. That deck put me behind, and I never really got ahead. It was a 2-1 match, but it was still very, very tough going second against that airman deck. So Tanner also hit me with the disrespect. He goes into a second turn, destroys the one foundation he has, and just starts going for the rolling fives to put me behind. So he got me with the disrespect. I held a couple of L's to Calgary. I used one Calgarian to get me a win, and then Mark and Tanner, when I played them, they were both playing like the air foundation control, keep you behind kind of style of decks, and Clark really struggles. So, Tanner was saying that Calgary really had my number. I mean, they did in this meta, at least. In this meta, they were playing stuff that I felt like was good matchups in their favor. So, but I'll talk about my good deck first, and then I'll go into my fire deck. So, the cards in my good deck, and the reason I built the good deck. The reason I built the good deck at first was I felt like playing a Clark deck, playing 4 of Pull Tamajigan was going to be extremely strong because 16 life you hit Desperation, which is a big window, especially with damage reduction. You can stay at that Desperation, at Desperation, but still not too low for a while. So Pull Tamajigan, really big. Like if someone needed to play a big kill turn, I tested against some Ringman decks. Ringman really struggled. Geyser decks were kind of struggling. Anything that had to play a big kill turn out and end on one big attack, even Shernui decks, even though surprisingly there weren't too many at this event, it kind of struggled. And a big example of that is I played Chris Pratt in the top 16, and Chris goes to kill me. I don't even remember what tack he was playing. He was just playing like a beating of a turn, and I think he had one foundation up. I want to say he was playing a kneecapper, but he was like kneecapper for 5. he only had his character up. So he goes kneecapper for 5 checks. I go pull damage again. He goes kneecapper for 5 checks. I go pull damage again. And he goes kneecapper for 5, and then he checked a 3, and then I was able to turn around. That was actually in the 3rd game, so I wasn't able to turn around and kill him, but it did keep me alive. 5-handers or 5-handers sometimes. So if I would have drawn maybe 1 extra attack or something, then maybe I would have been able to kill him since he was overextended. But that was sort of the idea behind the deck, was pull damage again is a big linchpin of it. It sets up those big defensive plays. You also really use the enhance a lot. So you will E to look at the top card of your deck. That gives you access to one of my other favorite cards in the deck, a new ally. So most of the deck has +3 block modifiers in it. So you will look at the top card of your deck, see what the block modifier of it is, usually a 3 block mod, then commit any number of new allies you have to give their attack -3 damage. So E-commit for -3 damage is extremely strong. Wall of Goro is a flip for -3 damage, so having a card that's E-commit for -3 is really, really strong. I feel like this new ally card is really underrated. It is very hard to use. You probably can't play it in any other decks that aren't good or a Cossack deck. But good decks that have Pull Tamajigan and this card together, I feel like, if good gets a little stronger, maybe gets a little bit more defensive foundations, this could end up being like a really strong wall deck where you're just like E-commit -3, E-commit -3, and it could be extremely, extremely hard to kill some of these good decks, maybe in time, but just something, if good was a symbol where you just always, good's bad, I'm not going to play good. This is something to look into. The new ally and Pull Tamajigan combo, I think that's really, really powerful. Another card was Sense of Justice, another form of damage reduction, +2 high block. I never noticed, Jeremy Ray kind of turned me onto the Sense of Justice card, and I never noticed that most people's attack bases are like all throws or all ranged, or in Garrett's deck, like all kicks. So most people have, or all stun, most people have a theme that go with their attack base, and this really takes advantage of that. It was really funny. I was testing Marco. He plays a king deck, so he's, kick, kick, kick into tornado kick. And I was just like, okay, you have 4 kicks in your card pool. I have 2 Sense of Justice, and I'm just like, -4 speed, minus another 4 speed, so -8 speed on his tornado kick, and then I just get an easy mid block in there. So this card was also really powerful, not to mention it has a +2 high block, which is, for a card of this power, a +2 high block, extremely, extremely strong. And a big reason I built the good deck was Zing. I know Phil Birch will tell you Zing is one of his favorite cards in the game. That was had a lot to do with his character design. I like Zing a lot. It is a relatively low-costed card for a lot of damage. It was going for 11 and 13 damage very easily in very early turns all the time. It's a high attack. Off symbol attacks aren't easy to block. And if you just get some kind of insane draw, and a lot of decks utilize its other ability a lot better than my good deck did. I rarely was able to use the static effect on it, but you can just string them out, which is really, really strong. So, and then I'll go, since I'm talking about attacks, an attack I sideboarded, which was kind of like a little bit of a sneaky play that I did. I like to use my sideboard a lot in UFS since it's only 8 cards. Sometimes I use it just as, like, let me sideboard this in this matchup just to see what it can do. And Shoryu Dan was really big. A lot of the time when, in the first game, if people see you're playing Shoryu Dan, they will just sit there and they'll hold, you're playing throws and Shoryu Dan. So if I just hold a high block, I can full block your Shoryu Dans and half block your throws the whole game. Well, all in particular has very poor high blocks. So some symbols have poor high blocks, and some people, it was just a couple of Shoryudans. So I'd side in a couple of Shoryudans, and they didn't see it in the first game. So then I might surprise someone with a multiple 2 for, or a multiple 1 attack for 16 damage. Um, a 1 card in hand for 16 damage, and a lot. Sometimes people just couldn't answer that. Sometimes people just died or took 16 or took 12, and it really brought some problems. It also came in my Snake Man matchups a lot against Daniel +2 low block. A solid card. I still don't know if I would main it. I think bringing it into the sideboard option to surprise people was better than actually maining it. It was in the one of spot instead of a San Pasar. I know a lot of people are like, San Pasar, Piglet, why'd you play that thing? It was really just for another throw. I wanted more than 12 throws. I wanted to hit, the 13 mark. There aren't many good throws. I never actually used its ability. I don't think I ever even used its ability, but it was a 4 diff. Playing a 4 diff in the early turns if you feel like you need to attack is, checking. Every time you play an attack with Clark, it's a heavy investment because you have to commit foundations every time. So if you play a 5 diff and have to check and have to invest 2 or 3 foundations and then invest another for damage, the difference of playing a 4 diff and a 5 diff attack in the early turns is huge. So the fact that it was a 4 diff was a big deal. So and then I'll also talk about my good deck. A really disappointing card that I would actually probably end up cutting. It kind of works against the deck, which I knew that, but I was, in my opinion, I felt like it's hard to explain, but basically I played a 2 of Cossack Citadel. My idea behind it was, I'm a 5 hand size, and this card helps me gain advantage over turn. It can essentially be a +1 hand size for me, except it goes directly into the staging area, so maybe even better than a +1 hand size. But its static effect, my opponent overextending into me and me tapping their good pieces with Clark, and then my own cards letting them ready those pieces that I tapped, did not feel good at all. It really didn't. I didn't like it at all. I cited it out a lot. I went in for more foundations or maybe just adding in a 1 Shoryudan, but it came out a lot. So now I'll talk about the fire deck since I think it's stronger, and a lot of my favorite cards in the fire deck are the reason that the fire deck is better than the good deck, and I'll kind of get into that. First thing, the card that really makes Fire Clark, the card that I think kind of pushed him over the top, is Key Techniques. Back when Tekken was still legal, there were some Clark decks that played Ultimate Team, which you discard a block card and attack gets minus damage equal to the block modifier of the discard block. So that was sort of played. Well, now you don't even have to discard a block card. So in my opinion, the cost is better. You get -2 damage off the attack. So Clark sort of becomes like you can continuously give these attacks -2 damage. And like there were games, especially like against Dan Hughes in a Ken matchup, where like the game went really late and I was just waiting to draw one more attack. So I had double Key Techniques and was keeping 4 cards in my hand. So like to reduce his damage, I hardly even had to invest any of my staging area. I was just investing my hand, and I was discarding foundations that, meant nothing. I was trying to draw another attack. So Key Techniques also really helps in the Ever Hopeful matchup. I ended up going. So at first I hadn't tested this card that much at Worlds. I only played a 1 of. Then in testing, I went to a 3 of. Then before the tournament, I was like, man, this card is so good, I'm going to play 4 of. So I ended up playing 4. And the main reason I played 4 is it's most of the time it's people's first target with Ever Hopeful. Because if they Ever Hopeful me and they don't target Key Techniques, unless it's a really, really key card in the matchup, I'm just going to discard it because I don't want Foundations in my hand. I want to see new cards. So it's like reviews for -2 damage, essentially. And if I had 2 in play, then they ever hopeful me, and I still have 1 in play to use. So my fire deck controlled momentum a bit with choke throw and things like that. But other cards that I'll talk about, I say fire. It was fire order. I splashed 7 cards. I splashed 4 of Into the Sunset because selective committal is one of my favorite mechanics of the game, and a 1/5. Clark has a high desperation vitality. 16 vitality is a lot to be at desperation. You can selectively commit. You can take damage, selectively commit some more. Hanya is probably the MVP of this deck. It really is. It makes people make some really tough decisions. It is so hard to kill Clark if he has Hanya in play. If I get a Hanya activation off, it works so well with his character. And I'm gonna maybe look into when Swordman and stuff comes out, when actually more weapons come into the game, because my deck didn't even play any ways to ready it. So if I have weapons where I can actually ready this thing, that's going to be pretty ridiculous. Won't even lie. So Hanya was probably the MVP card of the deck. Celestial Being was also really powerful. A big difference. 2 cards separated my good deck and my fire deck strengths. And the 2 cards would be Celestial Being, being able to control the selective committal, and Kimbrel Stern. This is Matt. How can I help you?